Pensions, special rules for end-of-life bill, not amended in committee, to be considered.
No.
We will begin with Amendment 1, with which it will be convenient to consider Amendments 4, 2, 5, 3 and 6, and I call Dr Thérèse Coffey.
Thank you, and I beg to move the amendments in my name. And I'm grateful to my honourable friend, the member for Tewkesbury. I'm also grateful to the government and the department. And the reason I've brought these amendments, Mr Deputy Speaker, is simply that, as has been seen on other pieces of legislation that we've just had given third readings to, is the timing of when these acts come into effect. Now, I'm very conscious that there's a number of situations where more work needs to be done to get some of the details, some of the guidance and other elements like that. But regrettably, there have been a variety of pieces of legislation where waiting for the Secretary of State to create regulations has somewhat delayed the introduction after royal assent of the effect of the Act, which so many people have worked hard to achieve. Now, to that regard, this isn't in any way trying to detract from the regulator, from the Department of Work and Pensions, of which I was very proud to be Secretary of State. What I'm particularly conscious about at this moment in time is the uncertainty of the timing of a general election. And of course, there are still procedures that can be done to some extent. But for those who have served in ministerial office, they will also know some of the challenges that happen in terms of process, procedure, different cabinet committees, and quite simply, and this is why I'm grateful to my honourable friend for listening to my concerns and to the government, is that this just removes extra steps of process. And the reason that matters is I am very keen to see this bill come into effect. And I'm not seeking in any way to actually hold it up. I want certainty into making this happen. And I was concerned, as I say, about the uncertainty of timing, and that is why, thinking also of the legislative consent motion that's already passed through Northern Ireland Assembly, I was careful to check these amendments would not affect that. And if there's in any way that it does, I've not been made aware of that. I've been given the opposite assurances. So I'm very keen to make sure that the United Kingdom moves together. We do have two separate, formally, systems in this regard. These are transfer powers. They've always been powers for the Northern Ireland Executive and the Northern Ireland Assembly to deal with. But it's important, and I know that the Northern Ireland Executive and Assembly have been keen, particularly in social security matters, for the United Kingdom to proceed in step so that we're not getting different treatments on these same things, especially when we all pay the same tax into a regard. We all tend to have the same service providers in that regard as well. So it's for that reason, Mr Deputy Speaker, after careful consideration, I wanted to make sure that this does become law within timely, without the need for further process, and that is why I will be moving my amendments.
The question is that Amendment 1 be made. Laurence Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and can I thank my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, for bringing forward these amendments, and indeed for discussing them with me over the last few days. We've worked to try to make sure the best outcome is actually found and is actually realised. And I think the point she makes, which is probably an unusual circumstances, every 5 years one would hope, where there's a general election coming, it does throw things into doubt. And so the last thing we would want is to get royal assent and then, for some reason, probably the election, this bill not come into action. So I do understand where she's coming from on that. I'd also like to thank the Minister again and the Government again for having discussed these issues and coming to an agreement to accept these amendments. So I'm certainly very happy to accept them. No need for me to drag it out any further at this point, but I do thank all concerned for their work on this.
Angela Eve.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I rise just to ask a few points of reassurance on the amendments, which I'm not against in principle at all, but reading them when they appeared on the order paper, I could understand what the Right Honourable Lady was attempting to do and see exactly why she was doing it. But it did also strike me that they rather run roughshod over established procedures, particularly with respect to the devolved administrations, by giving quite a strict timetable. And I wonder whether the Minister, when she responds to the amendments, could reassure the House that this kind of approach to what can often be quite complex, not in this circumstance, but in other circumstances, can often be quite complex changes which have to be done appropriately, putting a very hard stop, regardless of context, into a bill is rather a difficult precedent. And so, whilst I don't object to what she's trying to do, I was slightly surprised by the sort of bulldozer sort of approach that the amendments create. In a circumstance, in this circumstance, it's manageable, but it might not be quite so manageable in other more complex circumstances. So I suppose I'm seeking to get some reassurance from the Minister that the precedent that's being set by these amendments, how wide will it go? Are we going to start putting on the faces of bills precisely a hard stop timetable as to when they're going to be put into effect, regardless of the complexity? I understand the honourable gentleman wants his bill and we all want it to be done quickly, but there are some precedents here which are slightly worrying if they were to be extended in a more wide way. So when the Minister rises to answer, I wonder if she might give us some thoughts and insights in that respect. Mr Deputy Speaker, I just wanted to make it certain that we're not objecting to this bill on this side of the House at all, but I'm just quite surprised by the innovative way in which the Right Honourable Lady has sought to pursue her desire to get this thing done quickly.
Minister.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I thank my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, for her considered amendments and for the reasoned arguments behind them. And I know she's been engaging extensively with our excellent officials at DWP, whom she knows incredibly well. The Honourable Lady opposite kindly asked about innovations, and the Right Honourable Lady behind me is someone who was incredibly innovative as well. So I'm not surprised that this is drawing attention. And I also thank the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury for listening to these matters. In regard to precedent, it's not unusual for bills to have set commencement dates, and if we are sure that we're able to commence on that date. So I hope that reassures her in regard to the precedent. I think we can all agree that we want to see the provisions in this bill commenced with minimal delay. They are important ones and will provide much needed financial support up to 6 months earlier than currently to those individuals who've received the devastating news that they have a terminal illness. And I think to that point, the Right Honourable Member from Suffolk Coastal, nearly moved you to my area, is very mindful of that with her experience within the department, and that is what is driving these changes. The changes the bill is making build on the work that the Department of Work and Pensions started in 2022 under the formidable and inspiring leadership of my right honourable friend, and she will only be too aware of the importance the department has placed on ensuring we do everything we can to help people at these difficult times. The amendments would seek to specify, as I say, on the face of the bill, the point at which the provisions would come into force. They provide for this to be a period of 4 months after the bill has received royal assent. As a consequence of putting the commencement date on the face of the bill, the power for the Secretary of State to make regulations commencing the provisions or transitional or saving provisions would no longer be necessary, and Amendments 2, 3, 5 and 6 remove all these provisions. Similar amendments are made to the provisions that cover Northern Ireland, at which point it may be prudent to remind the House that the Northern Ireland Assembly has already provided legislative consent order for the bill as drafted. So I hope that reassures my right honourable friend. Mr Deputy Speaker, when the bill was drafted towards the end of last year, it was clear to the Department how quickly the Pension Protection Fund would need, it was unclear rather to the Department how quickly the Pension Protection Fund would be able to implement the changes. So by making the decision to commence them via a commencement order, if provided, the Department with, it provided the Department with the flexibility to ensure that the Pension Protection Fund were in a position to implement the new conditions at commencement, and that the corresponding changes to the Financial Assistance Regulations 2005 could be made at the same time. And I should point out, Mr Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend, the Minister for Pensions, was very clear on commencement during the committee when he stated, I can confirm today, that the intention is for that to happen as soon as practicable after royal assent, and I see no reason for delay or obfuscation. So hopefully we're all agreed, and we can all be assured that we've absolutely no intention of creating any unnecessary delay in bringing forward this bill and these provisions vitally into force. They are extremely important measures that will make a massive difference to those individuals at the most difficult time in their lives, and indeed their families, bringing real comfort, which is why this bill is so welcome. On conclusion of the committee stage on the 24th of April, officials from the department sought further clarification from the Pension Protection Fund on how quickly they could implement the proposed changes. Their response was very positive, Mr Deputy Speaker, and would like to place on record our appreciation for the work they have been undertaking to facilitate these changes. They've confirmed that their internal teams have been working towards having everything ready for this change from the beginning of July this year, the earliest date this bill could potentially have received royal assent. So, to my right honourable friend, I can confirm that DWP officials have been in touch with those counterparts in the Department of the Communities in Northern Ireland. They've helpfully confirmed they do not envisage, indeed, any problem commencing the relevant Northern Ireland provisions in a timely manner to retain parity across the United Kingdom. So, notwithstanding the point from the Honourable Lady opposite, and with that in mind, I see no reason why the Department cannot meet the new requirement these amendments will impose, and have recommended that the Government do not oppose them. And in doing so, can I thank my right honourable friends for raising her concerns, bringing them to the House in the matter in the style that she has.
The question is that Amendment 1 be made. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to Amendments 4, 2, 5, 3 and 6, which have already been debated. With leave of the House, I will put the questions on these amendments together. Dr Thérèse Coffey to move formally.
Formally.
The question is that Amendments 4, 2, 5, 3 and 6 be made. As many of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Consideration completed. Third reading what day? The Laurence Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the bill will now be read a third time, and I'm very pleased that the bill has seen a relatively smooth passage through the House, and for that I'd like to thank the Government and indeed the Opposition for their support on this bill. Although it's very narrow in scope, it will provide financial assurance to those who have received the devastating diagnosis of a terminal illness and who have also seen the sponsors of their pension schemes become insolvent. The bill will do this by amending the definition of the words terminally ill. It's only right that when someone receives the awful news that they may have only months to live, that financial problems should be the least of their worries. the loss of their rightful pension payments should not mean that they must live out their remaining time constrained by their financial circumstances, and the aim of the bill is to address this problem directly. For wider context, this bill focuses on the Pensions Protection Fund, the PPF, and the Financial Assistance Scheme, the FAS. The Pension Protection Fund was established by the Pensions Act 2004 and pays compensation to individuals when the sponsors of their defined benefit schemes, usually their employers, become insolvent and lack the necessary assets to pay those pensions to the level which the Pensions Protection Fund ordinarily would pay. This is when such insolvency takes place on or after the 6th of April 2005. The Financial Assistance Scheme applies to individuals whose pension schemes were unable to meet their pensions liabilities in full when those schemes started to wind up between the 1st of January 1997 and the 5th of April 2005. The bill concerns the compensation payments made to people diagnosed with a terminal illness from these schemes. The Pensions Protection Fund provides a one-off lump sum payment to those who receive such a diagnosis, whilst the Financial Assistance Scheme will begin to make payments to someone at any age. The issue that this bill seeks to address is the definition of a terminal illness. The Pensions Protection Fund and the Financial Assistance Scheme both use the same legal definition of terminal illness. That is, a person is terminally ill at any time if at that time the person suffers from a progressive disease and the person's death in consequence of that disease can reasonably be expected within 6 months. Now, the same definition was used by the Department for Work and Pensions for the purpose of calculating benefits, but this was reformed in the Social Security Special Rules for End of Life Act 2022. The 6 months period included in the definition of terminally ill was extended to 12 months. The change in definition to these two pension schemes then seems only logical. This would keep the definition consistent when making social security payments. It's difficult to say how many people will benefit from the bill, and in reality we don't really want people to benefit, as this would mean that the sponsors of the pension funds have become insolvent, which of course we don't want to see. But in such circumstances where this is the case, this piece of legislation will benefit terminally ill people. While the scope of this bill is technically limited to the Pensions Protection Fund and the Financial Assistance Scheme, I hope by bringing forward this bill to encourage any workplace pension that does not have provision for terminal illness, where the member has a life expectancy of 12 months or less, to consider putting such a scheme into place. Depending on their scheme rules, many private pension schemes can already make what are called serious ill health payments under tax law if the member has up to 1 year to live, so it will be change well worth making. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the heartbreaking job of a terminal illness diagnosis falls to health professionals, and modern medicine, surgery, palliative care and the general care provided by our incredible NHS staff makes that judgment even more difficult. It's therefore right to extend the definition of terminally ill from the narrow band of 6 months to the more accommodating threshold of 12 months. Not only is this fairer to the people who are ill, but also to those who have to make the difficult judgment, especially when those health professionals will know that a person's pension payments may be resting on it. Mr. Speaker, as we've just heard, this bill extends throughout the United Kingdom and comes into force in England, Scotland and Wales 4 months after royal assent, and likewise in the case of Northern Ireland. And I commend it to the House.
Read the third time. Dr. Thérèse Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to support my honourable friend in this important change. He will be, as he referred to in his contribution, in his speech, on which I commend him for the detail, which he also displayed at the Bill Committee stages on which I was happy to serve on his committee. I think it's just a recognition that regulations have moved on, and the reason why we, as a government, with the support of Parliament, made the changes in regards to social security benefits back in 2022 was to align ourselves with what was happening within the NHS. And I'm very conscious that there'll be plenty of people who recognise they get a terminal illness, but that lifetime could be longer than either a simple 6 months or 12 months. I think this is done in particular to consider where we can we're starting to see people perhaps get diagnosed later, but also to be able to accelerate and extend the benefits that are potentially there. So in terms of the National Health Service, they do consider people to be terminally ill when they estimate that they have about 12 months left to live. And that's never an easy message to give or for people to receive, undoubtedly. And there seemed to be very little medical difference or accuracy necessarily in quite getting the timeline right. But it's been well-established practice in the NHS for that length of time. That's why I think this is sensible legislation to align to 12 months with how the NHS treats patients in that, as opposed to this somewhat arbitrary 6 months. And I think that the particular reference to the PPF and the financial assistance scheme that is available will be very much welcomed by people right across the country in the UK. And I think that is why I'm particularly keen to see this legislation pass through the Commons today and indeed through the Lords at great speed.
Nickie Aiken.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I wish to begin also by thanking the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury for tabling this important private Members' Bill, and it is a pleasure to be speaking in favour of it in third reading. Mr Deputy Speaker, pensions offer individuals peace of mind, knowing they have a dependable source of income after years of dedicated hard work, as well as alleviating the stress of financial uncertainty in old age. Pensions allow retirees to maintain their standard of living during retirement. I welcome this bill as it seeks to provide the same opportunity for financial security for those with terminal illness, and thus offers a more dignified end-of-life experience in what I can only imagine is a very unstable and devastating time for the individual and their families. This bill seeks to extend the definition of terminal illness for the Pension Protection Fund and the Financial Assistance Scheme to 12 months rather than the current 6, in order to allow those who are eligible to receive the vital financial support. And I welcome the fact that the bill will bring the PPF and the FAS in line with the NHS and Department for Work and Pensions definition of terminal illness, which is also defined as 12 months. Indeed, thanks to the brilliant work of our NHS and the consistent progress in medical science, it is difficult to predict how long someone is likely to live, and in some cases, patients are able to outlive their initial prognosis. That is why this bill is so important. It is also due to our NHS and medical advancements that more and more of us are reaching pensionable age. Mr Deputy Speaker, as we all know, many developed nations are now facing an ageing population as birth rates decline. Therefore, the amount of British people accessing their pensions at any one time will steadily increase. And in fact, pensioners represent 18.6% of the population, and 12.5% of my constituency is 65 and over. This government has done so much to support pensioners. We heard in the autumn statement that the government announced an 8.5% increase in the state pension, in line with the government's initiative, the Triple Lock. And as a result, the new state pension is now worth up to £900 a year more, and ensures that older people get the support they deserve. Those nearing the end of their life deserve to have access to the same level of financial support. And it is thanks to the compassionate government that people with terminal illnesses are able to get faster and easier access to certain benefits through the special benefit rules for end of life. Recent changes mean that special rules now apply to people who have 12 months or less to live, rather than 6. Now, those who are eligible are able to claim universal credit, employment and support allowance, personal independence payment, disability living allowance and attendance allowance. This bill will simply align the Pension Protection Fund and the Financial Assistance Scheme with those existing provisions, reflecting this government's commitment thus far to aiding those nearing the end of their lives. The government has also provided necessary cost of living support worth over £1.4 billion. This support includes 2 rounds of means-tested cost of living payments, disability cost of living payments and pensioner cost of living payments. We have all heard, Mr Deputy Speaker, from our constituents the anxiety felt over the cost of living crisis, rising prices that were caused by the pandemic and Putin's weaponisation of energy due to his illegal invasion of Ukraine. Imagine now how this situation would worsen for individuals facing a terminal illness. The cost of heating their home, travelling to their medical appointments and potential childcare costs as their life is turned upside down. Marie Curie, the charity that does tremendous work in this area, has published what I would call an eye-opening report, Dying in Poverty, which reveals that on average a pension's energy bill doubled once they are diagnosed with a terminal illness. I find that incredible and very, very worrying. The report also highlights that people of working age who die are twice as likely to spend their final years of life in poverty compared to people of pensionable age. This poignant reality demonstrates the crucial need for bills like this one by enabling individuals in these unfortunate circumstances to access their pensions early. This bill addresses the crisis outlined by charities such as Marie Curie and aims to restore dignity to those affected. Mr Deputy Speaker, I have mentioned the work of Marie Curie, obviously, and I would also like to take this time to pay tribute to amazing charities registered in the cities of London and Westminster that support those nearing the end of their life, such as Compassion in Dying, a national charity that provides advice and information to those at the end of life. The Sunseeker London Charitable Trust, which provides financial support to organisations dedicated to the care of terminally ill people. And the Bennett Kleinworth Charity Trust, which provides care and treatment of terminally ill people. The work of these charities play a vital role in advancing progress towards addressing the challenges faced by terminally ill individuals, which is also the objective of this bill. I once again express my support at third reading for this bill. I understand that it is also the hope that this bill will encourage other pension providers that do not currently have provisions for seriously ill health payments for those with a life expectancy of 12 months or less to consider putting them in place. So while this bill may be narrow in scope, I am confident it is a necessity and the wider positive impact it will have. Any one of us can be diagnosed with terminal illness, and it is important that there are provisions in place to offer financial assistance. I commend my honourable friend for bringing this admirable bill forward.
Angela Eagle.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I too would like to rise and congratulate the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury on bringing the Pension Special Rules for End-of-Life Bill before the House today for its report stage and third reading. And as we've heard, the bill does seek to ensure financial support for terminally ill people who've seen the sponsors of their pension schemes become insolvent. Thankfully, that is a small number of people, and we hope it doesn't get any bigger. But that illustrates the narrowness of this bill. It looks to expand eligibility for terminal illness payments from the Pension Protection Fund and the Financial Assistance Scheme to all those with less than 12 months to live from the existing rule, which is 6 months, which brings the definition of terminally ill in line with that used by the Right Honourable Member for Suffolk Coastal's old department, the Department for Work and Pensions for Social Security payments. And as the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury highlighted in his speech, this bill is narrow and it concerns, thankfully, a fairly small number of people. But its impact for that group will be significant, unlocking access to a vital lifeline of support at a time when they've received a terminal diagnosis. So for this reason, Labour supports and welcomes the bill. I think receiving a terminal diagnosis is devastating, both for the individual themselves and for their family and loved ones. And such a diagnosis brings with it a slew of challenges and difficult decisions. As the Honourable Lady for City and Westminster pointed out, the Marie Curie report on this makes very, very sobering reading indeed, pointing out, as it does, that 1 in 4 people who receive a terminally ill diagnosis, 1 in 4 of working age spend the last years of their lives in poverty, and 1 in 6 pensioners are below the poverty line at the end of their lives. Now, there are different reasons for all of those things, but one has to imagine the circumstance in which people find themselves to understand that this bill is a tiny step in the right direction for a group of people or in a particular context, but by no means will it solve a lot of the issues of old age, poverty and illness, which this bill touches upon. Marie Curie have also highlighted that terminal illness all too often brings with it huge financial burdens and extra costs of up to £12,000 to £6,000 per year for a household. And this is the so-called double burden of income loss and additional costs, which a terminal diagnosis can often bring about. And that pushes families towards insecurity and fear about their income, confronting poverty at a time when they have insecurities and other fears that they have to deal with. It's another layer of distress, Mr. Deputy Speaker, at the hardest of times. So those with a terminal diagnosis shouldn't be forced to spend the end of their lives worried about making ends meet, and I'm sure all members of the House would feel a lot happier if there weren't so many of our pensioners finding that that is actually what they are facing. So by opening up eligibility for support, be it through a lump sum payment from the financial assistance scheme or payments through the pension protection fund in the narrow range of circumstances the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury has rightly identified, this bill will go some way to ease the financial burdens for those who are lucky enough to have a defined benefit pension entitlement, but unlucky enough to have had their pension fund go bust and end up in the pension protection fund. So it will go some way to ease financial burdens for those people. But extra costs and extra access to cash can allow those nearing the end of their lives to focus on spending the time they have left with those that they love, supported with dignity and respect. And that is what everyone, I think, in this House would want to see. Now, whilst Labour welcomes this change, I do question why it's been left to a private member's bill, albeit we're very happy to support the glorious achievement of the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury in bringing it forward. But we supported the Social Security Special Rules for End of Life Act in 2022, which amended the DWP's definition of a terminal illness for the purpose of social security rules to less than 12 months to live, raising that from 6 months. It was right to make that change then, but I wonder why more work perhaps wasn't done by the Right Honourable Lady's Department to check the consistency of those rules when this Act was put onto the statute book, because if that had been done, we would have had 2 more years of support for those who are terminally ill between the 2022 and 2024, and many people would have been helped. So I wonder whether there were any other inconsistencies lurking in the DWP on this 6 to 12 month change, and I wonder whether the Minister might have a trawl through the many bits of legislation and statutory instruments that deal with this kind of thing to see whether any other inconsistencies are there that could be put right quickly. I'd like to ask the Minister if she will, at the dispatch box today, commit to ensuring that there is this consistency across all the definitions of terminal illness, and that because the move has been made to shift the definition from 6 months to 12 months, that she will undertake to the House today to make certain that there aren't any other inconsistencies lurking, and we don't have to do this again with another private member's bill to make sure that that definition will finally land at 12 months and there won't be any leftover 6-month definitions to cause an inconsistency. Mr Deputy Speaker, every hour 10 people die in poverty in the UK, whilst 1 in 4 terminally ill people of working age spend the last year of their life in poverty. And the cost of living crisis has acutely affected those who are nearing the end of their life. A terminally ill person's energy bill can rise by 75% after their diagnosis, with critical equipment often sending bills soaring. Energy, for example, the cost of energy to run an oxygen concentrator can be £65 a month, a dialysis machine £27 a month, or a ventilator £35 a month. Very few people wish to be in hospital when they have access to these services, but all too often it appears that we are leaving them with the costs of running these vital bits of machinery to keep them alive on their home energy bills. So it's an indictment, I think, of 14 years of government failure and neglect of our public services that so many people are spending the end of their lives in poverty, struggling to make ends meet, worrying whether they can afford to run the equipment which is keeping them alive. The way our country treats those nearing the end of their lives should really be a mark of how civilised we are, and I fear that we are not passing that test in this country as well as we should. So let me finish by repeating my congratulations to the Honourable Member for Tewkesbury for his work on this bill. We fully support its aims, and we hope to see further work in this area.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for Tewkesbury for bringing this important piece of legislation to the House, and for the way he has successfully navigated it to this stage. I thank him for his important speech and insights on why this bill matters, matched equally by my honourable friend from the cities of London and Westminster. And I thank the honourable lady opposite for her support of this bill. She asked the question, why was this not in the 2022 Act? Unfortunately, it was out of scope. That bill was altering entitlement conditions for benefits. And I can assure her my officials have said no other areas are in need of amending. So that gets the thumbs up at the dispatch box this morning. And in terms of consistent definition as well, this bill will build on previous legislation, as I say, that changed special rules for social security benefits. So this final change now brings the payments made by the Pension Protection Fund and Financial Assistance Scheme into alignment with those changes. Now, I would like to thank all members of the House who have taken part in the debates the bill has seen to progress to this stage, including the committee stages, and for the full cross-party support it has rightly received. As it has been outlined earlier, the bill builds on the 2022 changes the government introduced for social security benefits. That legislation, Mr Deputy Speaker, welcomed at the time by key and truly excellent charities such as Marie Curie, the Motor Neurone Disease Association and Macmillan Cancer Support, changed the special rules for a number of benefits, ensuring claims were rightly fast-tracked and those who were thought to be at the final year of their life were able to receive that vital financial support 6 months earlier. And of course, this week is Dementia Action Week, bringing the UK together to take action on dementia and the understanding of its impact, the Alzheimer's Society and others and many groups and these charities doing so much on this important issue, and may I extend my thanks to them today at this dispatch box. This important bill, by extending the definition of terminal illness from 6 to 12 months life expectancy for payments under both the Pension Protection Fund and the Financial Assistance Scheme, completes the journey. The changes this bill makes will mean that members are able to rightly claim their compensation on the grounds of terminal illness if a medical professional confirms that they have less than 12 months to live rather than the current 6 months. And members in the chamber this morning have spoken about the terrible time that people will be going through and the financial impact. And I'd like to point out that there is quite often more financial assistance for people than perhaps they know if they're not used to being part of the benefits arena. And I would urge people to look at the benefits calculator at .gov.uk, to work with the Citizens Advice Service, who we have the Help to Claim service with, so that those costs can be met and understood at a really difficult time. And to assure the Honourable Lady opposite, in my role as Minister for Disabled People, Health and Work, I indeed met with the Energy Minister just this week on costs and various other matters in and around the National Disability Strategy and the Disability Action Plan. So it's something very much, as she said, at the forefront of my mind, and we are aligned on those concerns. The decisions on terminal illness will be made by those healthcare professionals, such as clinicians and medical practitioners, and we thank them for this great work at such a difficult time, as pointed out by my honourable friend. At committee stage, the definition most certainly will include those such as advanced cancer, dementia, as I've mentioned, motor neuron disease, and other neurological diseases such as perhaps Parkinson's. The changes restore the original policy intent of alignment between the Social Security Special Rules provisions and both the Pension Protection Fund and Financial Assistance Scheme terminal illness rules. And just as importantly, they bring both schemes, Mr Deputy Speaker, in line with the tax definition of serious ill health, which currently allows private pension schemes to make payment where the member has less than 12 months to live. And can I just briefly reiterate what I said in the earlier debate on the amendments and repeat what the Minister for Pensions said at committee stage? It was never our intention to delay the commencement of these provisions. There is no practical reason for us doing so. However, as discussed today, putting a commencement date on the face of the bill will provide certainty around the change at a time when people do value certainty. And we will ensure that the provisions can commence 4 months after royal assent, as signalled. Now, I don't want to delay the House any further, Mr Deputy Speaker. We know being told that you are nearing the end of your life can be a frightening experience, both for the individual concerned, their family and their loved ones. As mentioned, this bill, seemingly very small in size, will have a really positive impact on those who the provisions cover at a very difficult time. And as with the 2022 Act, the bill will ensure that when someone does reach the final stages of their lives, when they will not have to have those additional financial concerns. Receiving a payment at an earlier stage in their final illness will help them to plan more effectively, to provide them with the opportunity to focus on their time with the people that matter to them. And it gives me the opportunity to thank the St Peter and James Hospice, the Hospice in the Weald, St Catherine's in Pease Pottage, and local hospices I'm sure we all have in our own constituencies, and those charities mentioned this morning who bring real comfort and support in all of our constituencies at such difficult times. This bill will help people to live well to the end with their loved ones with that comfort. I greatly thank my honourable friend for bringing this bill forward, and we all wish it safe and speedy passage to the other place so it can reach the statute book and support those people who need it, our loved ones, the people in our community, with no undue delay.
With leave of the House, Laurence Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. By leave of the House, I'm pleased to draw this debate to a close by thanking the Minister and also the Opposition, particularly for their support, but also particularly with regards to the setting the date for the actual commencement of the legislation. And in that context also, my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, for her amendments. Can I also thank all members who have spoken today, and particularly those who served at the committee stage. I'd like also to extend my thanks to all those in Department for Work and Pensions and the Bill Management team who have been so very, very helpful. The staff at Marie Curie, who's been mentioned a little earlier, who have campaigned so strongly on this issue. And honourable members know that we cannot function in this place without the help of our staff. So I'd particularly like to thank my staff, Benjamin Jones and Harry Wallace, for the work they have put in. Mr Deputy Speaker, I hope that by working together on this piece of legislation that we will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that the bill be now read the third time. As many of that opinion, say aye.
Aye.
The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr Robertson.